I recently received a friend request that reminded me of this story, so I'm going to share it here. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18 at the time. I made an effort to make friends after I moved onto campus, and ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend, and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was this one class before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterwards to eat in pairs or threes. I wasn't very discerning about who I'd have lunch with because I got on fine with most people from the class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after that class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We talked about school and that kind of thing. Nothing noteworthy. But she did ask me to go to lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern. There wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else on those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day in class, I asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk toward me from a couple of seats over. It was such a sharp reaction that it was hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request. No friends in common. Don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guess that she dug through the university's social media pages and found me through there. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine, right? She ended up messaging me a lot and commenting on anything that I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward and we became friends, if not close. I'd known worse people. She still always got me to go eat lunch with her after our one shared class. Other than that, we rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her. So it was mostly online messaging and seeing each other in group settings. Coincidentally, my girlfriend was also named Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily, not my girlfriend Lily, who could have found it less interesting. It's a pretty common name. She occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name, or joked about her not suiting it. She clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had an idea of why. It was kind of hard to ignore at this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried to not address it, but what was I gonna say? I've never known what to do when a friend make a pass at me. I was also not interested in the least, even ignoring the weird stuff she pulled. She was not my type at all. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who still is obsessed with Disney princesses, if you can even picture that. Things took an uncomfortable turn on the day of our last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she normally did, Lily asked if I'd go for a walk with her. Again, I didn't exactly know how to refuse, so I just said alright. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods, and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat down on a log, and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried placating her, but I didn't want to be there, especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I think I tried to make an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I just got out of there and was happy to think I wouldn't see her again for quite a while. I came back to the university after summer, moving into a house with my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues within my friend group. A lot of petty arguing and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend around the start of that year as well. And basically, the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily because it suddenly didn't seem as bad. With all that being said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We mostly just talked online. She was still constantly messaging me after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy. Lily was not pleased to hear that news. I think she hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend. Like I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and this new relationship, so she must have thought she missed her chance to be with me. And this is where the story gets pretty bad. At this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I occasionally talked about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something kind of odd happened. One of the blogs I followed had received an ask with some phrases that I recognized. I took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. Someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I cannot stress how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in some book that they were trying to study. The reply was basically, I don't know, sorry. But more important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It was linked to someone's blog. Obviously, I wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life, other than my boyfriend, knew about my page at all. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy pink and red page. There were a few posts about her interest, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest, me. Most of the posts were about me. There were accounts of things that I'd done recently, as well as references to things from far back as I'd known her. It was clear she'd been keeping tabs on me, both online and offline, gathering up every scrap of information she could about my life and hoarding it here in her collection. She talked about us eating lunch together and how special our dates had been to her, as if it was actually anything more than just acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time she'd forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song and talked about how she'd always been there for me, no matter who else came into my life. Lots of references to loving me just the way he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter I received earlier that year with that same wording. It got worse. There were a lot of posts about my boyfriend as well, and those weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me. He didn't know what he had, and if she was me, she'd be jealous of anyone else who came near me. So my boyfriend, not being a jealous person, meant he didn't love me. He was angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write something so obsessively, being fixated on me. There was one thing that didn't make sense at first. It was that the blog also made plenty of references to Lily's best friend Steven. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her post talked a lot about Steven and how great a friend he was, how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo that captioned it with, "Steven sent this to me. He knew I would like it, and I love it," or something like that. The problem was, the photo was taken from my own page, and I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers shared it with her, because in her head, she'd split me into two people. In her messed up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend who was always looking out for her, as well as her soulmate, who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my sweet and kind boyfriend, and all the other easy girls I hung out with. She made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to? Oh, Lily had an audience. She asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and got messages back from her followers. People who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of random people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and that we were bound to break up soon so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake fan fiction version of my life up for anyone to share their opinion on, and she made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into the page's history. I did not look at everything that was there. It was just too much. So, I'm not sure how long this had been going on actually. I sent Lily a message confronting her about the blog. She said nothing, and I cannot stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her all the while talking about how she was in love with me. I would make sure that we ended up together somehow, and slamming my boyfriend, as well as building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it. She clearly believed to be real, then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing still. She didn't address it. She just changed the subject, even after I pushed it, and was like, she hadn't even registered what I even said. I've never seen anything else like it. She deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name and hid it so I never found it again. But it wasn't the end though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes, and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively keeping track of me for who knows how long freaked me out. The next thing that she tried to pull was seduce my boyfriend, which was an absolute useless attempt that only made him uncomfortable. He told me about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why would I want her after that? When that didn't work out for her, she tried hitting on 3 of my other friends, and none of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but made sure to send me messages while they were together, letting me know that she'd rather be with me. No thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was a time when I tried to pull away from her, and she ended up starting rumors about me and damaging a career opportunity that I put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it made me realize I was safer to let her think that she was a part of my life while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would get her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted to spend time together, but I knew I didn't have time now. I made excuses about work and barely talked to her after that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asked me to meet up with her, attempts which I usually ignored. I didn't like to think that she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things that I mentioned online somewhere she shouldn't have known about. The last time we had a real conversation, she sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in much longer than that. Just thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what had happened. At first, she was asking me some questions about how long I'd known I was queer. I told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing I'd tell anyone who asked. Then she changed the subject. She started talking to me about how I would feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she'd had about the two of us. Again, we were not friends at this point, and we'd never been especially close, at least not from my perspective. And again, we hadn't barely spoken for years. I can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely even knows you. I tried telling her not to pull this crap with me, but she decided to change tactics. She sent photos of herself, followed by a bunch of messages, maybe 4 or 5 a minute, way too fast for me to reply before the next one would arrive. Basically quoting back what I'd told her about myself and my past earlier. She was telling me these things as if they happened to her. She was role-playing as me. The worst part was that she seemed to believe that it was real, that those things actually happened to her. Even when she was quoting me word for word, things I'd told her only hours before were now her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history, to take it over, to make my life part of her. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again after that. I ignored future attempts she made to talk to me, and I eventually silently deleted her from inactive social medias, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really thought she finally might move on. A few days ago, she sent me another friend request. It's just sitting there, unanswered, because I know if I delete it, she'll only send another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then, it's the only stuff I know about. A lot happened behind my back. I know it did. So, girl who's spent 12 years obsessing over me, stalking me, harassing me, fantasizing about me. It's not meet again. The fantasy life you built for the two of us is in your head, and it's the only place you'll be seeing me anytime soon.
A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, as I had never smelled that before around that house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up some time later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone's screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I had opened the door and stepped inside. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, the one I was in, a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in the bedroom, because they charged back into the room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put into a mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I had heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I had expected that. Chairs had been knocked over. The sofa had been flipped. All the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed and canned foods had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, though, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often use to smoke meth, so they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realized that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family or friends that night and get that door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts and foil. But I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and sides of my house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house, though. I lived there another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going into my closet, and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he hadn't gone into the bathroom at the end of the hall first.
This is actually my stepmom's and her best friend's story. I have my own, but I'm so hesitant to drag some of them up. I'm hoping that telling someone else's will open me up to it a little bit more. My stepmom didn't like us much, but she told my sister, who was 3 years older, and I had the experience growing up to scare us out of being stupid. It was my family's stranger danger story. My stepmom, we're going to call her Macy, grew up as a kind of privileged teen in the 70s, and her mom had moved their family over here from England when she was about 9. She went to a pretty nice high school, and there, she made friends with a girl named Lily, who didn't exactly run with Macy's type of the crowd, who was popular, stereotypical, you know. They really hit it off, and Lily would take Macy out to do her own type of stuff, like hiking and fishing and sailing. Anyways, because of Lily's influence, the two of them would do stuff like that at a good amount. One Sunday, they decided to go hike in some hills about an hour away. Macy put on what I'm sure were her extremely expensive hiking shoes, and the two of them drove off to hiking trails. Lily parked in this big clearing with the makeshift parking spots, but there were no other cars there. This was important in hindsight. Started hiking up the hill, off the path because Lily fancied herself as something of a badass. The hike was nothing extraordinary. They reached the top of the hill and my stepmom was done. The polished and pampered side of her was coming out and she groaned until Lily begrudgingly said okay. They would rest and then start walking down again, this time slower. They'd been heading down the hill for maybe 10 minutes when Macy started complaining again. Lily conceded to walking down the side of the road instead of the rough hiking trail. So there they are, probably looking like a couple of tools geared up for hiking and then walking down a crappy road. And after not even 5 minutes, a truck pulled up next to them. It was a red and rusty truck, and generally looking like a clunker. So the girls looked in as the passenger side window slid down. He had a big beard, a baseball cap pulled down, and long brown hair. He greeted them and even smiled through his beard, asking if they needed a ride. Macy described him as charming and even cute. Lily still says the moment they greeted them, her hackles went up. Despite her better judgment, my stepmom convinced her to get inside the truck. It must only be a 10-minute drive down, tops. The girls opened up the passenger door to this rusty old thing, and the guy directed them behind the seat to get in the back. They settled in, and the truck started rumbling forwards. Lily always said that this was the point that hit her, of what a mistake they had just made. The back seat was clean enough, but there was a rope on the floor behind the driver's seat, 4 boxes of saran wrap half hanging out from under the passenger seat. It seemed creepy and weird, but Lily didn't want to freak my stepmom out, so she just kept her mouth shut. After 10 minutes or so, the woods didn't look any clearer. They hadn't seen another car the whole time either, and Lily asked how long he thought it would be. He told them he was taking them down a different route, down the hill, and they had to stop to get something first. That was it. The girls were 16 and 17 at the time, and Lily didn't want to press the issue, but she was scared. She can remember his hair because he was sitting behind him. He looked like a woodsy guy, but his hair was super tangled and dirty. She noticed crusted mud on his collar and tried to find something identifiable about him. Just got scared the more she picked up on little details. He was youngish, strong looking, and had a 1 on both of them. So they didn't ask any more questions, and he didn't offer any information as they drove on. Several minutes after that, they reached a tiny shack or a log cabin looking place, right there in the middle of the trees. There's an old stump where someone had been chopping wood and a huge axe stuck into the log. Lily was definitely on red alert now. The guy turned off the truck and slipped out of it saying, "I'll be right back. Don't get out," and then disappeared into the house. Lily tried to talk to my stepmom about how she was incredibly uncomfortable, but she mostly just dismissed it. Lily started begging, increasingly freaked out, and then finally put her foot down, demanding Macy exit the truck with her, so they got out and walked around the front of the vehicle. The house was about 50 yards in front of them. They wandered around looking at it, hesitantly. If this guy was really decent and just trying to give them a ride, it would be super rude to just run off, right? My stepmom had this strict upbringing when it came to manners and a public persona, and she saw it as an issue of that nature. So she actually started to head back towards the truck, opening the front door to climb back in behind the driver's seat. Lily was pissed off and followed her to yell some more. On the driver's side floor, half hidden underneath the seat, there's this big hatchet. It had dried red-brown stains covering the blade and stuck to the floor underneath it. Lily understandably lost her shit. And seeing it, my stepmom started getting hysterical. They decided that leaving was by far their best option at this point, and just booked it off the side of the property and into the trees. They bumbled around in the trees for a little while, until Lily was fairly confident that they were back on their way down the hill. My stepmom cried all the way down. Lily felt bad about it, but was also completely freaked out, especially that he would hear it, and kept trying to calm her down. When they finally got back down to the bottom and saw the old wooden fence that surrounded the original parking area, they were relieved. But as they got closer, they saw it. The truck. It was parked on the other side of the gravelly makeshift lot, just sitting there, facing the other way innocently. They couldn't see if anyone was in it, and of course, Macy wanted to just run for the car, but Lily was super hesitant. She managed to calm my stepmom down, saying that she wanted to wait before running out into the open to see what was out there. Remember, this is the 70s. No cell phones. There's no ranger station or anyone else around. The parking lot was big and empty, open. Who knows what would have happened if they decided to just stroll across it. Thankfully, Lily convinced my stepmom to chill. The two of them hunkered down against a big tree, hidden by bushes and other trees, and just waited it out. They sat there for a couple of hours when dark started to fall. All the animals started coming out and making noises, and my stepmom started getting antsy about this and bothering Lily, who was tired and moments away from just giving in. She was just planning their dash to the car when they heard a clunk across the twilight lit lot. They watched as one of the back doors of their car swung open. The bearded guy slid his way out of the back seat. He got out and shut the door, and looked around at the surrounding woods for several moments and then walked back to his truck. The truck lumbered past their car and out of sight. Several minutes after watching him drive away, they sprinted their car as fast as they could, jumped in, and peeled out before they had even shut the doors. If this guy is even still alive at this point, he's definitely really old, but still, let's just not ever meet. When I was around 7 to 8 years old, I was visiting my grandparents with two of my cousins. The house was very secluded on the outskirts of a rural town. My mom, grandmother, and aunt were busy downstairs in a back room spring cleaning, and us three girls were playing upstairs. Taking a lunch break, my aunt called out to us from the upstairs kitchen. We walked into the kitchen and she asked us if we'd been in her purse to play with her wallet. We told her no, and she thought some money was missing, around $20. So my cousin and I volunteered to look for the money inside her car, just in case it fell out. We went to her car and looked around, and found nothing. My cousin accidentally slammed the door, and she told me, "Shh, don't tell my mom. She hates when I slam the door." I agreed, and we went back upstairs. Minutes passed, and we all started making sandwiches. My mother looked out the window and said, "Girls, you left the car door open." We ran to the window and we kind of froze for a second, and we assured them that we did not leave any car door open and confessed to actually slamming the door that was open. At first, things started to feel creepy. First the wallet, now the car door. After watching the car for a while, we didn't see anyone, and my mom bravely said that she would close the door so the interior lights wouldn't run the battery down. She went outside and closed the door. The landline to the house rang. My grandmother answered and her face turned completely white. She started yelling for her mother to get in the house and lock the door now. We all got upstairs and we hunkered down in the corner of the room while my grandmother called 911. My mother reported feeling someone watching her when she was closing that car door. She also thought she saw a shadow inside her Astro van that had tinted windows. Someone unknown to my grandmother on the phone said, "I know you're in there," and hung up. At this point, we're all scared and crying, waiting 30 to 45 minutes for the police to show up. When we finally see a police officer in the driveway, we all run outside. He starts taking a report of what had happened with the money, the car door, and the phone call, as he's writing everything down. I yell to my mom that there's smoke coming from the top of the house, on the back side, so my grandmother freaks out, thinking that she left a pot of beans on the stove and maybe the kitchen caught on fire. The police officer looks up to see the smoke for himself, calls in the fire department, and then runs inside the house, instructing everyone to stay outside. Moments later, he comes back outside and is completely bewildered. Nothing was on fire, and the smoke outside is now gone. The fire department and backup police arrive. They search the house and the nearby land. Nothing. To this day, we have no clue what happened, who that person was and where they went, and how they knew my grandmother's phone number, and what caused that smoke. The only speculation we made was the phone call was probably made from inside our van, as we had a mobile bag phone. I was terrified as a kid, and still shudder when thinking back on this. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk me on Instagram. All these links are below. What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a great day. Last week, I was in Tennessee all week, and I had every intention of releasing 2 episodes, and then scrambled the last couple of days to, and only ended up getting that 1 episode out on Tuesday. So I'm sorry about that. Again, I'm sure if you're not, if you've been here for a while, you know that I am unpredictable with my schedule. And most of the time when I say I'm going to stick to something, I do, and then I don't, and then I do, and then I don't. So yeah, at some point, which moving forward from here on out, I have every intention of still continuing to upload Tuesday, Thursday, or sometimes it might be Tuesday, Sundays. But just bear with me, be patient with me. And also, huge thanks and a huge shout out to one of my really good friends who, being scared, you know who he is. Really great dude, really cool dude. Very fortunate to have grown and become really tight with this guy over the last year or so. And I really appreciate him coming on and reading a story with me. It was very nice. So, yeah, appreciate you, man. Thanks again. And I appreciate everybody else listening and watching. And yeah, I have no idea what else to say. So if you're using this to sleep, sweet dreams. If you're using this just to fucking, I don't know, whatever you're using this for, just to, you know, whether these stories are unsettling you or relaxing you, I appreciate you listening nonetheless. How about that? How's that sound? That sounds good. And I'll see you guys on Thursday. Cheers.